This is Chapter 4, The Guardian of Ailos. The only light Nelson could see now came from around Sid's neck, the locket. Its soft glow barely illuminated their faces in the darkness that enveloped them. "Sid," Nelson asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "was this supposed to happen?" "It's okay now," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. I think this is part of the test." "Test?" Nelson asked, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "What test? Was he supposed to know about this test?" "I'm not sure, but the book mentioned something about these doors, and I think they lead to different realms. Plus, I saw some writing around them. Search the walls. Maybe we can find a clue." She walked over to the door closest to her and lifted the locket. Its light revealed some strange lettering. Nelson stepped up next to his friend. "Okay," he said, taking a deep breath. "But where should I start?" At the sound of his voice, the locket's light flickered and danced across the wall, casting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Sid watched, transfixed as the shadows began to form shapes on all of the doors, symbols and patterns similar to the night before. She smiled big and began tracing the symbols as they floated by. Nelson went ahead and stepped back from the wall, just in case. "Do you know what these symbols mean?" he asked, squinting at the wall in front of him. Sid paused. She had a concentrated face. "If I remember correctly, Ailos was the name of the kingdom that existed in my mom's stories. It was a place where everyone was free. There was no sadness or pain, and most of all, she said that no one ever lost anything. And if they did, everything was always found. The people there spoke Ailean? No, Ilethian, I think." As she started to speak, her voice took on an otherworldly quality. "To a world beyond your own, the doorway lies ahead, one of shores unending, another's home for sending, the third a home to mountains far, which holds all fear and dread. A precious stone will mark your path, beware the dragon's breath." The blue light inside her locket shot out and plunged itself into the door. The room went dark, but only for a moment. Within seconds, an explosion of light filled the walls, illuminating new words. The room shook and the floor trembled beneath their feet. "Sid? What's happening?" Nelson asked. He stepped further back toward the center of the room, his voice quivering. "I don't know." Sid spun around, trying to keep up with the light as it expanded outward from the door. It filled the walls, ceiling first, and then... "Look," Sid said, pointing at Nelson's feet. "The floor, it's moving." Just then, a loud thud sounded throughout the room, and the floor started to vibrate. Sand and small pebbles started dancing around a large, intricate mosaic lying at the center of the room. Nelson pivoted in the direction of Sid's finger just as 3 holes opened up and beams of colored light shot upward. One blue, one gold, and the other an ominous red. The hum of the earth continued until the whole room sang with new light. The red light drew Nelson in like a moth to a flame. The beam looked so perfectly shaped that Nelson believed it to be solid. But when he reached out his hand to touch it, nothing happened. His fingers merely passed through, only casting a shadow. "What do you think they are?" asked Nelson. Sid didn't hear his question. She too was lost, drawn in by the majesty of the mosaic beneath her. Comprised of hundreds of little painted tiles, the image she saw was of 3 beings, each holding 3 worlds. The first being looked like a woman. She was standing clothed in armor, with wings of fire stretching from her back. In her right hand she held a sword. It pointed menacingly at the second creature, and in her left she held a world of blues and greens. From the center of it shone a bright blue beam of light. The second creature, which was adjacent to the warrior, stood a proud gold-breasted dragon. Other than the chest and belly, the whole body of the dragon was covered in black scales. It had large wings with which it hovered, and from its mouth it breathed a stream of golden fire in the direction of the warrior. In one of its large black talons hung a world of reds and golds. The final being resembled a man, but his eyes burned like fire, and on his head he wore a crown. But this crown was not an ordinary crown. Instead of gold, it was made of wood. His arms were stretched toward the other two beasts and were adorned with ivy. In his chest sat a world of pure gold. Unlike the other two beings, this man had empty hands. No, wait. Sid ran her fingers down her neck and found the hanging locket. There was something missing in the middle of the man's right hand. The palm, reaching for the warrior, had a perfectly round hole in the center of it. With trembling fingers, Sid placed the locket like the final piece of a puzzle into the vacant space. It clicked into place. A loud bang shot through the room. It sounded like large stone gears slamming into each other. Once again, the floor started to move, but this time it had a rolling sensation, and with it, the 3 columns of light retreated into the mosaic, each beam transferring its energy through the floor and into the walls surrounding them. With one last loud bang, the 3 doors came buzzing to life, each one radiating a bright light. While Sid was still crawling around inspecting the mosaic, something shimmered in the reflection of the red light, demanding Nelson's attention. The ruby set in the dragon's door. He squinted his eyes, trying to pick out the details. That is when he realized that the stone wasn't actually red, but glassy black. In the middle, stretching top to bottom of the precious stone, a red line started to widen. Entranced, he heard a hum of energy in his ears. It felt like excitement, like waking up on Christmas morning. Before he knew it, his hand was reaching toward the door. And just as it hovered over the front of the gem, a vision flashed in his mind. The dragon, a woman in armor. His mom? A loud hiss pierced his mind. Screaming, high-pitched screaming, a scream that echoed through time like a call for help reverberating through a cave. His knees buckled, and he grabbed his ears to try and block out the sound. "Help me!" shouted the voice. It sounded like a girl, then a woman, then all at once a million different voices. Nelson saw his friend come running, but she looked all muffled. 2 or 3 versions of Sid kept phasing in and out of the original. She was yelling something, but by the time Nelson heard the voice, it sounded blurry. The light in the room started to dim, and the walls began to close in. Nelson's breathing was labored, his vision blurry, and most of all, he was confused about what just happened. He tried to hold on to what he saw. He had too many questions to let go. Why did this keep happening to him? What made him the target of this nasty dragon? He didn't even have the locket. And even if he did, he remembered the feel of it in his hands. The warmth, the smooth edges. His finger curled into a fist. He longed to hold it again. And the voices, who was it? There's no way that his mom could be mixed up in all of this, could she? Why did that warrior woman look so familiar? Exhaustion finally took over. He couldn't bear the weight of this vision, of not holding the answers to the questions that it posed. His body slumped up against the door and crumpled to the floor. Sid, kneeling beside him, was the last thing he saw before passing out. No answers, no solutions, just an overpowering urge to help whoever it was behind that door. That was Chapter 4 of The Guardian of Ailos. As a reminder, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment or come find us on Substack, and we'll be right back next week with Chapter 5.